Yeah, like Mike was saying, I'm kind of losing my voice. So if you want me to repeat something or need me to go over something again, I'm happy to do that. And so with that, I'm Shannon Jones. I'm the Western Washington Materials Management Coordinator with the Department of Ecology. I really appreciate Mike and Misha giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. And I'm going to make this PowerPoint available after this meeting, and it has some links and contact info. So if you have anything that comes up after this, that's definitely something we can do. So just as an overview of everything I'm going to discuss tonight, I will talk about the implementation delays that led up to the October 1st effective date. We'll go over the basic requirements of the law and some of the resources that we have developed for businesses and local governments to communicate the details to the public and their staff. I'll also talk a little bit about our enforcement strategy, and we'll give a preview of some of the other new plastic laws, like the single-use serviceware on request law that were passed this session and that may affect some of the people at this meeting. And then happy to answer any questions after that. So obviously the pandemic caused significant delays to the original January 2021 implementation date for the law. This was due to manufacturer diversion of materials to the production of COVID PPE, which caused supply chain shortages of the compliant bags. So in January, the governor issued an emergency proclamation to delay the start of the bag ban until the end of the COVID-19 state of emergency. And then in mid-July, he rescinded the proclamation and amended it to start the bag ban on October 1st of this year. So just as an overview, all single-use plastic t-shirt bags that we're all used to receiving and have traditionally received at point of sale or through delivery and pickup are now banned. Compliant bags can be made available to customers for an 8-cent per bag charge with some exception, and that charge is supposed to be shown on a receipt provided to the customer. The 8 cents is also eligible for a B&O tax deferral through the Department of Revenue. And so for reporting purposes, you should keep up with that and report it just like you would any other retail sale. The paper bags are required to contain at least 40% post-consumer recycled content, wheat straw, or a combination of those materials. The thick reusable plastic bags have some requirements they have to meet as well. They have to be at least 20% post-consumer recycled content. They need to be at least 2.25 mil thick. And both of those types of bags need to be labeled somewhere on the exterior bag with their recycled content percentage. The plastic bags also have to be labeled with their thickness and somewhere the word reusable. And so these requirements apply to virtually all point of sale businesses where you might receive a bag. So food service, grocery, retail, temporary vendors like farmers markets and food trucks. And finally, compostable bags can be provided free of charge. You don't have to charge 8 cents for them. However, we're just really encouraging that you work with your local composting facility, as many do not accept these kind of bags and it can't break down in their systems. So additionally, all single-use plastic t-shirt bags that are traditionally provided are banned. However, compliant bags can be made available. Yeah, so the important notes and exemptions are that, I think I already covered actually all of this. They have to meet the tinting and labeling requirements if you do provide compostable bags. And those are listed in RCW 70A 455 and 70A 360. And so there's certain things like the color and the words that you can use on compostable bags. Another important exemption is that SNAP, EBT, WIC, TANF customers, anyone who's on a food benefits card are exempt when they use that card for purchase. Food banks are also exempt. Single-use bag receptacles like provided at point of sale, where you might have customers drop off bags and then reuse them. It's technically not allowed. However, a workaround that I think would be great is to provide some kind of bin like that just on location, so that then technically the customer is bringing their own bag, because we do still want to encourage reuse. It's just you can't technically provide a bag without charging the 8 cents and without it meeting the requirements. businesses keep the 8-cent fee. It's not a tax. The Department of Ecology doesn't get that back. It's just the same as any other taxable sale. And then it has to be shown on the receipt, like we discussed earlier. So last year, Ecology presented draft outreach materials to a bunch of stakeholder groups, including the grocery, retail, and hospitality associations, local governments, nonprofits, and business owners. Moving forward, we'd love to engage more with groups like the Farmers Market Association and some of the groups represented here today, because this does affect all of you as well. So the feedback from those initial groups was helpful to creating this final product, which is an outreach toolkit that you can download. It's available in 17 different languages, and it helps to communicate the law to the public or to your staff. There's some that are a little bit more business facing and some that are more public facing. And so, yeah, we have those available in a downloadable toolkit. And this is just some examples. This is the flyer that we created that's really intended to be more business facing, because it's got a lot more detail with info about the ban and the iconography to make it helpful. We also have this flyer, which is kind of busy looking, but if you want to post it, if you have a very diverse customer base, it does communicate on a single sheet the core message: single-use plastic bags are banned by Washington state law. Paper and thick reusable plastic bags can be purchased for an 8-cent charge, and bringing your own reusable bags encouraged. And that's just so that restaurant owners or anyone who has a really diverse customer base has something to point to and just say, hey, this is the new law. We just want to make sure that it's easily communicable. So in the interest of time, I won't go into too great a detail on enforcement, except to mention that it will be based only on complaints received via the displayed form on the Ecology Bag Ban website. And so any member of the public can go and report an observation of non-compliant bags. Our policy then is if they leave comments, sometimes, we've already started receiving these, and sometimes from the comments, you can tell that it's not actually a violation or that it's not legitimate. But our first process is to make sure it's an actual business and that it seems like it's an actual violation. And then we have a pretty extensive outreach process that we start with before we would ever escalate to penalties. This involves sending a series of educational letters. You first would get one that basically just states the elements of the bag. We want to give the benefit of the doubt that a lot of people don't know about this or are struggling right now to fully gain compliance. And so to get a second letter, we wait 30 days after the first one's received before we respond to any additional complaints. We send the second letter. That goes all the way to a third letter. Worst case scenario, if we had up to 4 complaints over like 120-day period, we would have to consider that sort of a willful non-compliance, and then that would escalate to potential penalties. And so that just kind of explains that process graphically, but that's the protocol that we're sticking to. And we really just want to, we never want to escalate it to the point of penalties. We really want to work with business owners and help them to gain compliance, especially at the end of the pandemic while a lot of people are really struggling. So like I said, I'm going to share this, and there's quite a few links to resources, but we have our informational listserv, which you can join. It's now been changed from the bag ban listserv to the single-use items listserv, because we're going to cover some of the new laws under that communication form as well. And we're not going to spam you. We only send it when there's an important update or when something's coming up, but it can be good to be on. Our outreach toolkit is available on our website, and like I was saying, you can download it. You can even customize it, add your logos, print it, whatever you think will help communicate the message to either your staff or to the public. You can also contact me if you're looking for a start on manufacturers and distributors of the compliant bags. I know a lot of people are struggling to find those. I do not have an exhaustive list, and I can't necessarily vouch for any of the businesses on it, but it's probably 40 or more that are compiled now and has their contact info and the types of bags they carry. And so it may be a good start if you're just really struggling to find the compliant bags. and some of those people might be able to point you in the right direction. Yeah, I think that's it. So if anyone has any more items that come up or needs additional resources, please contact me. I'm the primary person involved with implementing this, and I want to answer questions. Most of the ones we've gotten have been really clarifying for me about the things that are unclear and that we need to be more clear about. Also, I do have the link to the plastic film recycling website. This is really good for people who are like, what do I do with these single-use plastic bags? They are an organization that has a locator on there where you can find a local drop-off near you. So then I'm just going to quickly cover this upcoming law that was passed this year that begins in January of next year. Under this law, single-use items can no longer be automatically provided to customers at any kind of dine-in or takeout establishment. That includes temporary vendors like food trucks and farmers markets and things like that. Instead, the customer must either directly request the item, or the business has to offer it and have the customer verbally confirm it, or there has to be like a self-serve bin where the customer self-selects. So this is not a ban at all. It's just trying to reduce some of that waste that comes from just throwing these items into every single bag given to customers. And so the new law applies to utensils, so forks, knives, chopsticks, straws, condiment packages, and cold cup lids. It applies to all food service businesses, including institutional cafeterias, and the only exclusion would be healthcare facilities. Items can also be made available in the self-serve bins like I was describing. They just can't be bundled or packaged together in such a way that a customer can't select individual items. And so we're hoping to convene some of those groups of stakeholders, like I mentioned earlier, just to make sure that we have plans for communicating this as necessary. If you want to share this with your members, we definitely want to get the reach as far as we can. And so we have a website for this. We're currently working on the outreach toolkit that'll be similar to the bag ban toolkit, and we'll just involve flyers to help businesses and public-facing flyers that you can use to educate your customers. We also will be utilizing the bag ban listserv to communicate important info about this to anyone that joins. And then I've also put the link to the actual RCW in this PowerPoint. And then this is a while down the road, but may also affect some of the businesses here. In June 2023, packaging peanuts will be banned, expanded polystyrene packaging peanuts. And in June of 2024, it expanded polystyrene recreational coolers and food containers like plates, clamshell containers, and hot and cold beverages will also be banned. So it's kind of an expanded timeline, and there's definitely time to work up to it, but just wanted to put that on your radar because it will be coming in the next couple of years. And so I just listed some contacts here. There's a bunch of new laws coming up and a bunch of different ecology staff working on those things. And so, feel free to reach out to any of us with questions. And all of these other people I've listed here are really awesome and want to help and want to communicate. So we just want to make ourselves available. So thank you for everyone being here. That's all I have. And I'm happy to answer your questions after I think you're going to have Colleen speak.
Yes, thank you, Shannon. And so everybody just sit tight for questions. I'm going to, when we get to questions, I'm going to break the ice with a question so nobody has to ask one that they feel might be self-incriminating. I've got a couple I'll pose on behalf of some farms that I've already heard from. But before we get to that, I'd like to introduce Colleen Donovan, who is the Executive Director of the Washington State Farmers Market Association. She's been kind enough to join us this evening to give a little perspective from farmers markets and how farms can work more closely with their local markets to incorporate the new policies associated with bags. So Colleen, the floor is yours for a few minutes. Just welcome and thanks for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you. So can you hear me okay, Mike?
Yes, we can.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I've never done Zoom before. This is my first. Just kidding. Karen's laughing because she knows that we live on Zoom. So thank you, Shannon. That was really great, and I'm very grateful for all the resources as Mike mentioned, I am the executive director of the Washington State Farmers Market Association, and we're grateful to have a lot of Pierce County and beyond members of our association. We have over 117 farmers markets that are members throughout the state. We work statewide. I'm in Central Washington, which doesn't have the greatest recycling, so it's always exciting to see new options coming, even though it means that there's few changes that we all have to make. But fortunately, Shannon's here to help us with that. And I just really wanted to start off by saying that I just want to say thank you to all of the farmers markets, managers, supporters, partners, vendors. For the last 2 years have been really challenging on so many fronts, and your hard work has really gone noticed. There's a lot of you know, a 1,000 different success stories that have come out of the last 2 years, and so it's a lot has been on your shoulders. I just really want to thank you for that. And here we have one more small change coming our way with this plastic bag ban. So with the State Farmers Market Association, we really do work to support farmers markets and the vendors at those markets. And we have direct educational opportunities such as our annual conference and boot camp. And we're very grateful to have the support of Pierce County for that event, and King Pierce Farm Bureau as well, and other sponsors, which we really appreciate. We'll be having it again in February, and we'll have great information, like hopefully we can get Shannon there to help explain how all the details work. And we also have a lot of information on our website, wafarmersmarket.org, as well as connecting our members on a regular basis to help keep them informed of all of the different policies and changes and good news and challenges that are coming our way. So we're here to help all of you thrive, really, is what I wanted to say. A couple just key farmers market related points, and we could love your questions. I have one for Shannon, but Mike will follow Mike's lead here, and that is non-incriminating, of course. And just to really want to emphasize that we've really grown the amount of SNAP and SNAP market match at farmers markets. And so that's just a really key detail to flag for vendors that they're not, and markets not able to charge those folks any sort of fee for their bag. So that's just one kind of detail that's important. Another is that I think a lot of you know that farmers markets are very creative about branding their bags and their totes. And, you know, there was a point at which maybe you thought you had too many, but they're a great opportunity to turn this into a positive branding opportunity to get there to help shoppers and vendors comply with this new regulation. And so fortunately, we have a great track record of having a lot of really creative bags out there that farmers markets provide at their information booth. And even some vendors as well. The other thing I would say is that a lot of farmers market shoppers and farmers really do care about the environment. So think about how we can turn this new requirement, this new ban, if you will, into a real positive opportunity to once again reiterate how your shopping at a farmer's market is able to do an easy way to do a little more good for the environment. I think there's an opportunity to play into what people want to be doing. They want to be helping in any way they can. And so, and we can work to create some Facebook posts and to help the markets who are going to be educating vendors and shoppers at the same time. So we want to turn this into as much of a positive as we can. And with that, I'd say we also have great relationships with suppliers, Market Supply, some of the other ones that vendors use and know and love, and we'll certainly be making sure that they're able to I'm sure they're already on it, but getting those compliant bags so that everybody has as smooth a transition as possible. So those are the kind of the key pieces. If any of you are interested in joining our general partners, Washington Farmers Market listserv, just shoot an email to info@wafarmersmarkets.org. And we just send out information that's very specific to farmers market, and we'll be certainly sharing some of Shannon's information as well. Yeah, so just those are the points I wanted to hit on. Oh, thank you, Mike.
Did I get that right? Is it farmersmarkets.org or market.org?
Markets, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Perfect,
Okay.
perfect.
Okay, so thank you for that little spiel, Colleen. It's good for people to hear that the markets are thinking about how they're going to address this and how they're going to work with vendors, because I think that sometimes farms, if they're wanting to go work with a market, this is the kind of thing that can really help them feel comfortable starting the season out, knowing that the market is there to help them navigate these kinds of policies. So I appreciate those perspectives. And I'm going to ask the first question so that nobody feels like they have to ask this one. I was going to ask a follow-up, and I might still do that. But the first one is, what are the rules on using existing inventories? So I'm a farm. I've got, a closet full of bags that I ordered, special for my business that have my logo on them, or whatever the case may be. And I've spent a lot of money on that, and I want to make sure that my customers can use it and I get use out of it. And you've explained the enforcement, and the infraction component of that. I'd like to hear what your take on that is, and then I'm going to tell you something that I told a farm, and hopefully you don't get mad at me for what I told him.
Yeah, so this is coming up a ton, obviously, because people had to order these bags during the pandemic, and there were a bunch of shipping delays. We don't want the bags to go to waste. That would go against the whole spirit of the law. Technically, there was a 6-month grace period built into the original law, and that was not technically extended in the late implementation date. However, our policy is we expect people to be using up their inventories. If we respond to a complaint and the complainant says in the comments, which they often do, that they spoke to the manager, or they spoke to someone about it, and they told them straight up that they were using existing inventory, which I think is very helpful in reducing customer confusion. If they write that in the comments, we don't even respond to it at this point. We just log it and we'll come back to it later. However, if they just say, business is still using single-use plastic bags, we'll reach out with that initial letter. The letter it's, like I said, mostly educational, but it does have all our contact info in it. And so the business could call us. We get in our database, and if you explain, we're using up our inventory. I think maybe if multiple ones came in, you might be required to provide an invoice or receipt to show that they were purchased before October 1st. And we don't really anticipate people using up inventory much past the first of the year, but we fully, want to support people in not losing money on those bags and in not wasting them, of course. And so we're definitely planning on using enforcement discretion and on just communicating with people when that comes up.
Yeah, so I'm going to tell you what I suggested this farm business do, and it's really applicable for folks that are operating their own on-site farm stands, which I know we have a few of those folks on this call this evening. And I said, just put a sign up next to your register that says, we realize the bag ban is in place. We're using our old inventory. We expect to cycle through it all, and then we will be in full compliance with the bag. Just to try to take some of that away, what you just said, people writing in and filing complaints, maybe that can preemptively stop them from going in and wanting to file a complaint. If they know that a business is aware of it and plans to follow it, they just have this overstock. So.
Totally, yeah. I think anything that a business can do to communicate the details of the ban to their customers is super helpful. People assume a lot of things about the law. They misunderstand a lot of things about the law. They're either extremely for it or extremely against it. And so I think it's just really helpful to provide as much info as you can. You could even also reduce some confusion by using that same strategy I was mentioning earlier, where you have like a self-serve bin, and you just say, if you want a bag, bring it up from this bin and you can use it. That way, it's not even the business technically providing the bag. And I know that sounds like a weird workaround, but I think it gets people accustomed to the idea of we're going to have to bring it in if we're going to use it. And so I think that's another good educational tool and moment.
Okay. All All right, so I broke the ice with a question that I don't think anybody would have really wanted to ask because they might have had to feel like they were admitting they were using plastic bags still. So with that, yeah, we have a question in the chat. Somebody has asked me they'd like to have asked, so I'm going to ask it on their behalf. So for you pick farms like, you know, strawberries, blueberries that are really prevalent, especially in the Puget Sound area, they send home produce in various containers. What do things like Ziploc bags, like, are those exempt from this policy? How does that work?
Yeah, so those kinds of bags are exempt. Produce bags are exempt, as long as they're not, you know, as long as if they're not the wrong color indicating to be compostable or something like that. But produce bags are still allowed. Ziploc bags that like that for pet waste, you know, any kind of bag that you would buy in store is still allowed. I also wanted to note that paper bags that are smaller than the large grocery paper bags, the ones that are less than 1/8 barrel, I think the measurement is 882 cubic inches. Those bags you do not have to charge for. They still do have to meet the post-consumer recycled content and labeling requirement, but they don't require the 8-cent charge, and that might be a good option where it applies. I know it can't apply to all kinds of produce because of, you know, moisture and things like that, but that's another good option for a bag that you don't have to charge your customers for.
Colleen, I know you said you had a question you wanted to drop into.
It was your question, Mike. It was the same question.
It's a good question. We've been getting it a lot, and you know, we totally understand that a lot of people are in that situation, and so of course we don't want those bags to go to waste or people's money to go to waste.
Okay, so anybody that would like to ask a question? Okay, I see Alice, you've raised your hand. Feel free to unmute yourself and fire away.
Hi, this is Alice. I'm from the Emergency Food Network. We're the WSDA contractor. Hi, Evan. Great to see you. I've had some requests from our food pantries. We have about almost 80 of them. And they're a large recipient of donated second use or unused plastic bags, and while they realize and they love the idea of reducing that use, they're wondering where they can go and what they can do to receive donated or low cost or even free packaging. A lot of our food pantries are looking at between 20 and 70 pounds of food per client that they give out, and it's hard to expect the clients to show up with their own bags when they can barely afford their own food. And so they're supporting this, but they're wondering what they can do. If you have any ideas of where to go for donations, or I mean, it's not PPE, it's not, I don't know. They're just having a hard time trying to get their heads around this, and they're a little concerned. So if you could speak to that, please. Thank you.
Yeah, so I know this is not directly your question, but just wanted to reiterate that the bag ban does not apply to food banks. But I think the issue, of course, is that they've traditionally relied on single-use plastic bags, which are now no longer going to be in circulation.
Well, they just can't afford to buy their own.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that the thick reusable plastic bags that are being sold in stores, while of course we want them to be reused, the reality is that a lot of people are not going to and are going to wonder what to do with those. And so I think it'd be great for some of those types of services to set up some kind of collection bin. I don't know the best way to get that word out there to customers, or maybe use the channels that they already were utilizing to collect single-use bags from people for reuse. But that could certainly be done with the thick reusable plastic bags, and I think would be a great use for them, because unfortunately, I kind of think that they are a difficult problem. They're thicker. There's a lot more issues with them, but they are intended for reuse, and I know that a lot of people will not. So I think they could be deposited much in the same way as the single-use plastic bags, and using the existing deposit systems, and might even help a lot of people who are feeling bad about not reusing those bags. So I think that's one option. And I'll try and brainstorm other ones, and for sure share them if I hear about other people doing other things, or think of something that might make sense.
Okay, great. Thank you, Shannon. Jameson, I see a hand up.
Yeah. Hey, Shannon, I just had a quick question. It's a little off subject. Well, kind of. I was wondering how this pertains to, because I work a lot with parks and dog walking. I'm not sure. I know they're tinted bags. They're usually green. Is there a change with the poo bags that are provided by the various towns around the parks and sidewalks?
No, I don't think so. So the ban does not apply to pet waste bags, and there are, this isn't part of this law, but there are requirements under Washington state law that bags that are not compostable shouldn't be green or brown. I don't know exactly how that's enforced, or if it applies to the producers of those bags or whatever, but the bag ban does not apply to those kinds of bags, and they should still be readily available at the distribution points in parks and things like that. And of course, you can still purchase them in stores, because none of those kinds of bags that you purchase in store are banned. So like trash bags, Ziplocs, pet waste bags, any of that.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Other specific questions unique to your own operations or people that you work with?
I just wanted to say that one of the other exemptions that I read, just because of what I do, is for meat. So I don't always have customers that ask for it, but I know especially I have discomfort when I'm at a market and somebody has a bag full of beautiful fresh salad greens, and then I throw in a slab of frozen bacon in there. It's sealed, but I still feel a little bit like I want that layer of protection. So I know that meat is exempt, and you touched on the bags for produce also being exempt. Are there any other exemptions you can think of that might affect farmers?
So the wording of the law is that the kinds of bags that are exempt are those that are used for sanitary purposes. So it would apply to meat. I think ideally you would use produce bags for that, or some other kind of film wrap, since the single-use plastic bags are not really going to be in circulation anymore. But yeah, anything used to wrap meat or any other item that requires sanitation or might be wet is exempt.
Shannon, maybe you touched on this, but what about the grab bags? Like the that we see for cherries, for example.
So I'm imagining the small brown paper bags. Is that what you're talking about?
They're plastic. They can almost stand up. They're usually branded. They're very very specific. Apricots, soft fruit, cherries, and they're about this big.
I think that those are still allowed because they're not technically provided at the point of sale. They're not provided at the register. They are a product that you bought in store, and they're technically working like a produce bag. And so I think that those are exempt from the 8-cent fee, and they don't have to meet the thickness requirements or the labeling requirements of the compliant bags. But if you wanted to say, put one of those grab bags into a bag to give to the customer, then you would have to charge for that bag.
That's a great clarification. Thank you.
I think maybe we lost Mike.
I was wondering where he went.
I don't see him. But are there any other questions?
There's somebody else. I'm curious what Oregon does. Because, you know, for especially for some of those markets and some of the, you know, the folks on the border, is it sometimes the clarifying what happens on one side of the Columbia and the other can be confusing, or even Moscow, Idaho for that matter.
Yeah, so anecdotally, you know, I've been to some farmers markets in Oregon, and they have started charging for bags. They are using the compliant bags. A lot of the Washington law was based, and the wording and some of the decisions about the compliant bags were based on other states that passed them first. Of course, with some input from different stakeholder groups like business associations and local governments and things like that. But yeah, I don't know exactly the differences and similarities between them. I probably could find a table that compares them. We definitely have a table that compares the new statewide law to all of the pre-existing local ordinances in Washington, but I'm not sure at this point exactly the differences, only that they don't differ too much.
Looks like James, you have a question?
Yes, I do. You mentioned the needing a printed receipt for the charging of the bags. I don't know of many vendors at farmers markets that actually have printed receipts, period. So is that gonna be a mandate for us all to now have to have a machine that prints a receipt that shows we've, you know, transacted that? And then I do have two. And the second one is local vendors around here, actually stores, are saying they understand the EBT piece of it for charging customer, you know, they can't charge the customer the 8 cents a bag for EBT, but on the EBT card, but they're charging them, they have to pay cash for it. True, false on that one.
Okay, so for the first question, so technically the law says that you do have to have an itemized receipt provided to the customer that shows the fee on it. However, obviously, in the case of a business that doesn't have the mechanism to print a receipt, doesn't usually provide that. I think my suggestion to comply with the law technically would be to have a written receipt of some kind and just say, I'm charging you 16 cents for 2 bags. I don't know if you provide that kind of thing to your customers, and you know, I'm not sure if people would complain about it or not, but technically, according to the law, it does have to be on a receipt provided to the customer. And for the purposes of getting the B&O tax deferral on those compliant bags for the 8 cents, you know, you would have to account for it in some way. And so I'm sorry, I don't have a great answer for that. I think it's a totally great question. I don't believe it has to be a printed receipt. I think you could just write it, but technically it does have to be a charge that's shown to the customer in one way or another. So we can look again at the language of the law on that and see if we can interpret it differently. But I think maybe for now, the best option would be to do some kind of written transaction about it. Oh, the second part of your question, the EBT. So this was an item that we recently had to seek clarity from our Attorney General on. We initially were under the impression that any customer even possessing an EBT card or any other kind of food benefits card was automatically exempt as long as they showed proof of the card. The Attorney General ended up ruling that actually they have to use the card and that only that exempts them from the fee. I don't understand or know why a business would be requiring cash for that. Yeah, that doesn't make sense to me because they're not allowed to charge them at all. Certainly not on the card, but not separately from it. They are totally exempt. And so that's confusing to me. If that comes up, that would be an item of non-compliance that we would have to reach out to the business about and, you know, make sure that they understand. So someone could submit a complaint on our form and say, you know, this business is charging me 8 cents cash every time I'm using my EBT card, and we would follow up with that business. That item is written into our enforcement letters to make it clear. So that would be the best course of action I can offer, because obviously we can't sort of police that at every business across the state, but that's sort of the only recourse for that. And I think I
Yes.
see a question in the chat about the receipts. Could we just have pre-printed slips that you pass out at a farmer's market per bag? Totally. I think that would totally be fine. It just has to be shown to the customer as its own itemized item. And so I don't see any reason why, especially if it's included with each bag. And I think that's maybe the best option in this case, since there isn't a printed receipt and since you may not be, doing written receipts with customers. I think that's a good backup option.
So in that situation, that just reminded me of something. If you had like a stack of tickets and they had like a carbon copy on them and you just tore those out each time, you'd at least have to, at the end of the season, have a record of how many of those you'd given out.
Yeah.
As a way to track it.
Yeah, and I just
Could
want to
also-
oh, go ahead, Misha.
You could also maybe have a sign posted at your booth. Let's say you're at a farmer's market that states 8 cents per bag, and then you're just keeping a tally maybe of how many bags you give out. The handing somebody, every person, a receipt, like that can be really hard depending on how busy your market booth is. And also kind of doesn't really get away from this waste problem that we're trying to handle with the ban. So I don't know if that's an idea, but go ahead, Colleen.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that this requires a little bit more problem solving because busy market, no receipts. I mean, this is a pretty substantial ask, and I think maybe we could work together to problem solve some of the pragmatic ideas. I mean, can we even print the receipt on the bag itself? One thing, or something that just we got to find a real parsimonious way of dealing with this that's going to work for everybody. And I think there's some creative ideas out there, but we're going to have to resolve that. And
Yeah, I agree with you. And I would love to get on an email chain with yourself and Mike and whoever else we can get on there. Because the language of the law is pretty specific about needing to provide that receipt, and Ecology does not have the authority to create rules around that or to make exemptions for that. However, of course, this is a totally reasonable problem, and I fully understand the need for pragmatism and solutions on it. And I think that we could either work with the Attorney General's office to get a ruling on that, or we could just see what we can do, because I agree, it's not reasonable and there has to be a way. Maybe it is that it's printed on the bags, but there does have to be some accounting for it because, like I said, it does have to be reported to the Department of Revenue as a taxable sale. And it is eligible for the tax deferral. So I'm not sure exactly what that solution is. I would love to get everyone at the table and get your voices represented. So maybe we can follow up this meeting by just kind of convening a list of the stakeholders that want to be involved in that discussion, and I'll do everything I can to facilitate it.
that'd be great.
Hey, so out of respect for Shannon, I know she needs to get going. She has a prior engagement. So if there's another question she might have time to field, that's great. If it's a pretty complicated one, maybe we'll have to follow up after the fact next week with Shannon. But is there any other really pressing questions somebody would like to get out there? And I appreciate the comment in the chat from Katie. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I was just looking at that and I was like, yeah, if that's possible, that's a really great solution.
So I don't think this conversation is over by any means. As we've already discussed, there's more to come out of this, and I appreciate the fact that Shannon, you're willing to work on behalf of businesses with the AG's office to try to clean up things as they come across with this new policy. And I have a feeling that there will be things that come out of the farm sector and the farmers market world that might need a special bit of attention. And that's fine. And we'll work through those things. And if anybody that's on this call would like to reach Shannon, we will have access to the recorded meeting this evening. We'll have her presentation available. I'm going to find ways to get those things posted. I'll share them back through all the channels that we shared the announcement for this through, so that people can find it and get access to it, whether you heard about it from Farm Bureau or King County or whoever you learned about this from. We'll make sure to send it back out through those same channels. And we will see where it leads us. And Shannon's information will be in all of that. And I'm easy enough to find. I'll put my email in the chat as well, so that if you come up with ideas for questions and you want to come to me first, that's fine. I don't mind doing that. But in the interest of Shannon's time, I think we need to let her go.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I just want to encourage everyone to please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. Again, Ecology doesn't have rulemaking authority on this. We can't necessarily rule an exemption or something like that, but we really want to work with businesses. I think the law was passed with good intentions, as lots of laws were, but of course, on the ground, there's a bunch of details that end up getting left out. So it's good when these things come up, because I think it can be passed up the chain and help to make it better. So I'm really looking forward to those conversations. I know there's probably going to be other issues that come up. And so I think this group would be really helpful in coming up with creative solutions. And I'm grateful for your time and for sharing this info.
All right. Thank you, Shannon. We'll let you go. I'm going to stay on for a few minutes. If people want to keep asking questions, I'll try to field them as best I can. And yeah, go do what you got to do. Thank you so much for your time. And I hope your voice starts to feel a little better.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye, Shannon.
Bye.
Okay, so again, I'm going to stick around for another 10 minutes or so. If anybody has questions or wants to chat about something, I'm here, I'm available. Colleen, I'm sure, can probably stick around for a few more minutes if there's any questions about markets and how they can work. I know several of the folks on this call, some of you I don't know, but I know that many of you have your own farm stands, your on-site sales, and also work through some markets too. So we can try to answer questions. Okay, cool. Well, go ahead, Karen.
I have one quick question. I'm a little unsure of this October 1st beginning and end and any period extension period as to how long a farm or farmers market vendors could use current stock.
Yeah, so the way I understood it was there was originally a 6-month extension when it was supposed to go into effect on January 1st.
January, right.
But when they pushed it back due to PPE and all the other things going on with COVID to the October 1st deadline, Shannon did say they removed that 6-month extension that was originally built into it as far as any enforcement is concerned. However, she did say that the expectation is businesses will continue to use back stock. And
that's what I thought. That was my takeaway. Yeah.
And she said, to the end of the year, whatever. Well, for farms, it's going to be a little different because a lot of our farms are really seasonally focused, even like the ones that really focus on, like I know some of our farms that do pumpkins, they're giving people larger single-use plastic bags to carry pumpkins out. Those might last a couple of years because they only use them for that little window of time, and they might have purchased 20,000.
A lot, exactly. Yeah.
And so I think those are the kinds of things that that I wanted to ask. But as she did mention that if it became an issue where they were getting complaints, they might just ask to see a receipt that said when these were purchased. And that's a bit onerous for a farm to keep track of that stuff. And so that's the kind of message that I would want to be getting out right now to farms is if you have records, you need to hold on to them of any purchases that you've made for bulk bags.
It sounded pretty clear to me that they were maybe going to extend some grace in that, but that their expectation is not that you can just use up all of your stock as long as you have it. I think it sounded like the expectation was that if you had a bunch, that maybe you would be taking it to one of those plastic film recycling centers that she linked to.
I don't know. I was totally to your point. I was confused on that one as to exact when an end and start, or It's very gray to me.
Yeah. Mhm.
So that's
It-
one
It did
that we need
sound
to,
clear. Sorry, Mike.
no, I was gonna say, that's one that we need to come back around on with her then.
Yeah, she did sound very clear about like after the first of the year, they wouldn't expect people to still be using plastic bags.
Yeah, you're right. She did. Yes, she did say that.
And I think that that's where we get into the gray area of,
Yes.
you know, a farm that's only using this one type of bag for this
Yeah.
1 month every year, and they bought them 3 years ago and are working through a multi-year supply of it. So I think that's some fuzzy area that,
Well,
I don't think they
Mike,
want to punish people for that.
I wonder
No.
if there's something too we can talk about maybe for PCAR, but some kind of plastic bag aggregation and recycling event or something where it's not every farm business having or any business having to individually figure out how to recycle bags, but if we could come up with some kind of major event to help with that.
I also think their concern would be funding new bags when they invested in all these old bags,
Mhm.
to me. And that goes for farmers market, who are farmers and food makers as well as farmers. And so yeah.
I wonder if
I
that's
think, yeah. Go
part
ahead.
of the 8-cent fee, right? Because the way I understand it is that 8-cent fee is kept by the owner and it's eligible for some kind of tax deferment. So I don't know if that would cover the cost. And obviously you're recouping that very slowly over the course
A
of how long
long
you.
time,
Yeah.
yeah. And the receipts, if we go back into this, receipts to me are a real discussion point as we move forward. For all the reasons everybody always talked about.
Yeah, again, I'm not going to name any names about farms I've spoken with, but a farm that does provide plastic bags for people to like carry out pumpkins and things like that. I brought up well, how many do you have left and how much do you think it would cost to go to like, the IKEA style big bag that you see sometimes people have, those great big blue things. But again, we're still talking about using these plastic products. And I kind of feel like the intent of the law is to get people using things that are more fabric based, and getting away from plastics. And so those fabric bags are more expensive. And I mentioned to one of the farms that was on here earlier as well, that does a heavy CSA business load, of maybe you make that part of your CSA charge, one time is we're gonna get bags with our logos on it, and that's going to be an added, $5 charge onto your CSA this year, so that these bags are getting out there and farms are getting some advertisement, but trying to recoup payment. That's great for a farm that does a chunk sum payment like a CSA, but for farms that are selling not CSA style, either through markets or whatever, where are they supposed to recoup that? Where are they supposed to grab the funds to offset the cost of these, this marketing tool, this advertisement? So
I guess too, like one thing to think about is that it's really like businesses are not required to have bags at all. I think the point of this eventually is that the consumer is going to be responsible for having their own bags. And so in the meantime, farmers can purchase paper bags, which have been really hard to find throughout the pandemic and are probably going to be much harder to find now. But they don't have that same cost associated with them as like a tote bag or something would. And if you're at a farmer's market and a customer asks for a bag and you say, I'm sorry, I don't have one, or just all I have is a produce bag, I think it's going to be really rough in the beginning, but I think people are just going to start getting used to it.
Plus, like at Fred Meyer, they don't have the bags anymore and they have those 99-cent bags. Farms, I know it's one more expense, but buying a stock of those bags and say, oh, I'm sorry, if you don't have a bag, I can sell you one for $1. the cloth ones.
Yeah, it's going to be different for so many different folks, and I see you know, some of our farms that are still on here. You know, Alan, I hate to put you on the spot, and if you don't want to answer, that's fine. But how do you think this impacts you at your farm stand? Oh, you're on mute. Sorry, you're on mute right now. Can we unmute Alan?
I can ask to unmute. Do you see it there? There you go.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you for doing that. I had that trouble before. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, for somebody that's been in the business for 4 generations or 44 years, 3rd generation farmer, I think this is like one more straw on the camel's back that's going to break it. It's I wouldn't say there's merits there, but for somebody to put my produce that I grow in a bag they bring that I have no idea where that bag came from, and that happened to me the other day. I was need some moss killer from the roof of for the sheds in the house, and it was in a plastic bag, and I had to pay for it. And on the way home, it was in my back of my pickup. Well, behind the seat of my pickup, I can smell it. So I wouldn't want anybody to put my fresh produce in a bag that just carried a bunch of moss killer. You know, and so, and 8 cents is 8 cents. I know there's a threshold on when you're required to pay B&O tax. So when does that trigger collecting sales tax? And there's a whole dynamics there of when does a small farmer become comparable to a big farmer that needs a bookkeeper that has to take care of all this government intervention.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about the contamination thing. That's a really good point to think about. You know, if you've got customers bringing in their own bags, what else have they been carrying in those bags? Yeah.
I think that's why they allow, and I'm in total agreement with you, Alan, and I hadn't thought of that, but that's why she said for sanitation purposes, the smaller produce bags are still allowed. So, and I understand that some of your produce is maybe just not going to fit in those bags, like if it's a bunch of corn or something. And so I think that's a good point.
Also, I wasn't sure about, I think I understood it having used bags to pick up at the market and reuse. I don't know if that's really appropriate during COVID either. So that wouldn't be something I would do at my market.
Okay, well,
Looks
we're
like Rob has a question here.
oh, I'm sorry. Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Sorry about the chicken. Yeah, I don't have video on this computer. Yeah, I have a question. I do have some bags that are, you know, inexpensive, reusable bags that are, I guess they're, I don't know, they're kind of I don't know what you call them. Oh, what am I trying to think of here? It's not necessarily fabric, but it's not plastic. It's a woven poly, I guess. So are those bags also included in, if we do sell those to a customer to use, then the 8 cents has to be added onto that?
I don't think so, Rob. I think that falls under the category of a reusable.
Okay, all right. So yeah, I'm looking at I printed off Inslee's a little thing from the Washington single-use plastic bag ban off the website, and it shows, you know, the 4 bags. One of them is compostable, plastic compostable bag. We currently use those, and on this, it says free or fee optional green or brown compostable bags. And we don't charge for those. So, so again, my take on it is then we don't have to charge 8 cents for those bags either.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct. That's correct. And one of the things that is kind of sneaky on this is any of the paper bags. I was wondering what the number was, and it did show this evening. It's 40% recycled material. I knew that there was a standard, but I didn't know what the number was. So that means that any paper bags that you're purchasing, whether they are the ones that are the 8 cents or smaller, the uncharged ones, they still have to have that written on the outside of them somewhere. And it has to say either 40 or a higher number percent post-consumer recycled material. So she did say that they've got some lists of vendors. Hopefully we can get a hold of that as well and share it out with this other information. But yeah, that's another one of those things like, well, what about my back stock? You know, what if I bought something that was 25% post-consumer in bulk?
Make
Now
a
I gotta go
stamp.
to that. Yeah, make a stamp. So, you know, these are all really valid questions. And that's one of the reasons why I kind of wanted to do this, because I didn't get the feeling when I reached out to Shannon the first time that they had really had much conversation with any of the ag community at all about any of this stuff. And, you know, I mean, it's a pretty small component of the single-use bag market, but it still does impact quite a few of our businesses. And I don't really think that they had been given it any consideration. So this sort of opens the door for, I hope, the farm sector to start picking away at this thing and figuring out where the real problems are and try to get some changes implemented if needed. But I just didn't get the feeling from her when I first contacted her that they had really thought about us at all. So you got to start somewhere.
Yep.
Well, it's after 8 o'clock, and I'm gonna get off of here and relax for the evening. Colleen, thank you for joining us tonight and giving some perspective from the market side. Karen as well, market perspective.
Thank you.
Thanks to the farms that could sit in. Alan, I appreciate your time tonight, especially. And yeah, I'd just say everybody stay safe, stay dry. It's gonna be wet for the next few months. It started raining. I don't think it's going to stop for a while now.
Supposed to be sunny next Saturday.
We'll see.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night, Rob.
Good
Thank
night.
you. All right. Good
Good
night,
night.
everybody. You know how
Good
to reach
night,
me.
everyone.
Thanks, Mike. Maybe we should go in the
Thank you,
back.
Mike. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mike.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks.
Bye.